I've always lived between two harbours. No land to call my home. Out on the open sea, no place to birth, no place to shelter. A cabin, a classroom, a cell, in solitary. That's me. Tossed by the waves, I've lost so much. My mother, my people. Although I never really had a people, I always wanted to fight for the people, but I never found my tribe, my community, my group. Out on the wide ocean, you can be free. When I was small, I taught a blind boy once how to swim, but he got into trouble and he panicked, and I was too scared to dive into the deep, dark blue. The waves were too high. I was a good swimmer, but they were too high. The salt water in my mouth, I thought I was going to drown. I've always been alone. And that's a pity, really. It's a shame, because I love people. I love to sing and dance. I love to make people laugh. But it's never really lasted, and I'm not really sure why. So I've often been alone. I've really and truly been meeting some very interesting people since I've been in here, in prison. Ministers, doctors, lawyers, majors. It's really been quite something, quite a privilege. You're a better class of person. Educated, I mean. You see, I've only ever really dealt with the poorer classes, so communication has sometimes been rather difficult for me on account of my intelligence. But I tell you what, since I've been in here, I've only dealt with top quality. Before, people used to say to me, "Why do you talk so much, Minish? You're always talking. But now, you want to know details, personal things. I've had to think of every single day in my life, of where I've been and why I've been there. I've had to explain. And as I've been explaining, my life has appeared to me as a series of patterns. Pieces that all seem to fit together now. I now know that my entire life has been leading up to this story. There's the psychiatrist, Dr. Zabo. He's always asking me questions about my mother. He's particularly interested in this issue about my mother. And really, I would like to help him. I can see how frustrated he's getting. The only problem is I don't know very much about my mother at all. I sometimes say, my mother left home before I was born. But it was almost like that. Everything starts with the mother, they say. And really, I would like to help Dr. Zaba, but I don't have anything. I don't have a picture or a photograph that I can hold in my hand. Nothing. No, I did not know Dr. Verwoerd before, no. I'd never spoken to you before, no. I was ill, you see. I had this dragon tapeworm growing inside of me. I told them, I kept telling them that I was ill, I was helpless against the dragon tapeworm. But they wouldn't investigate. They said it was too complicated. very, very detailed, very difficult. I kept telling them, I'm not that kind of person. I regret what happened. At night when I try to sleep, I have all these imaginations, these visions. I dream of orgies. Maybe it has something to do with my nature, my hereditary nature. After what happened with Helen, I was still staying in Cape Town. I got a job, you see, as a messenger in the Houses of Parliament. And I was staying in this room, this small room in a boarding house. And it had a door. And outside the door there was this long corridor. And at the end of the corridor there was the toilet. And I remember that I was in this room and I had all these spasms, this pain, these spasms here in my stomach, because of not eating, because of the hunger, and the loneliness, the aloneness. And I remember I was too scared to move. I was petrified. I stayed in the room. I was too scared. I couldn't go through the door. I could not go to the toilet. I stayed like that, paralyzed in that room. Must have been for a week. But then, one morning, when I awoke, the sun was shining in the room, the rays warm on the linen, and in the light, I saw all these millions and millions of dust particles floating, like all the worlds of the universe. And then I realized that my fear was gone. I realized that I was suffering because of a piece of paper. And I realized where this piece of paper came from. It didn't come from God. No. It didn't come from me. No. It came from one man. One man who had called us by name. One man who had decreed that we should have forever written in our ID books that we belong to this group or that group. Black, white, colored, Indian, this invisible crowd. One man who told us who we were and what we should be and where we should be. And that man who named us, that was Dr. Hendrik Verwoerd. I was born in 1918, and I was named after my grandfather, Kapitanios Dimitrios Tsafendas. He was a hero rebel chief, and the people sang songs in his honor for his bravery. He fought against the Ottoman occupation of his country. And my father, he wanted to be like his father. And I wanted to be like my father. When I was still small, my father sent me to my yaya, my grandmother, in Alexandria in Egypt. And on those warm summer nights, Yaya and I, we'd take the mattresses onto the roof of the house, and we'd sit on the mattresses, on the beds, and just look out at the Mediterranean, with all its hues and blues, its waves, its splashes, its curves. Love the sea in Alexandria. Yeah. And the sea in Lorenzo Marques. And Durban. And Cape Town. And New York. Portugal, Sweden. Hamburg. The harbour on Port Hampton Dock. I was just 6 years old, my yaya died. So my father brought me back to Lorenzo Marques. And I thought I was Greek. Well, my mother was Greek, my yaya was Greek, so I thought I was Greek, but I did feel that everybody knew something about me, about the situation, something going on, but no one was telling me. I could feel it, I could sense it. I remember once, I went up to Mrs. Sedaris' house, and Mrs. Sedaris, she had this big house up on the hill, and inside this big house, there was this big lounge, and inside the big lounge, there was this big record player, and as a little boy, I loved music, I loved to dance. And inside the lounge was Mrs. Sedaris' daughter, with the smiling eyes, and I wanted to dance for her. So I walked into the lounge. I never asked permission or anything. I went to the records, I took one out of the sleeve, I put the needle on the record, and then I closed my eyes and I allowed the music to take me away so I could dance for Mrs. Sedaris' daughter. But then Mrs. Sedaris came into the room and she said, "What you doing, Gomproskilo? Leave my girl alone. Eh? Exo! Your mother is a mulatto, and you too, you're a mulatto. Mulatto! Exo! Su! Mulatto! Mew. Mulatto? I didn't understand. Actually, I had to wait a few more years before I found out what a mulatto was. I must have been about 13 or 14 at school in Lorenzo Marques, and now, not only did I love music and dancing and singing, I love to get the people to be happy and to clap for me while I dance, like now. You clap for me. Hey, bravo! Shouted, "You're nothing but a lousy colored!" And then the children ran away. And then the boys, they started kicking me and hitting me. Oh, see, and then the boys ran away. And then Benjamin Levy, he started kicking me and hitting me. He broke my nose, right here. It's the same place they broke my nose in the Houses of Parliament that day after it happened. But Mrs. Sedaris' daughter was there and she said, "Don't worry about them, Nines. They're only doing that because they're jealous of you." It was good of her to say that. It was kind. She reminds me of Helen, that little girl. Helen Daniels. It was good of her to say that. After that, I applied for a job at Imperial Airways, and I needed a birth certificate. But on my birth certificate it said that my mother was not Marika Tsafendas, but rather Amelia Williams, a native Mozambican woman. I was so shocked. I started crying. I ran home and I found my father. He was sitting there with Pater Bertolis, the priest. And I said, Papa, what's going on? And they looked at each other and they said, but of course Marika is your mother. And I said, Papa, please don't lie to me. Everyone's lying to me. You're lying to me. Look, Pater, look at the film. Look. And then they told me that Amelia Williams, my mother, and my father, they were lovers. She was his housemaid. Half Shangaan, half German. Where is she now, Baba? Dead. Tetanus. 10 years. Do you have a picture or anything of hers, Baba? Where is she buried, Babaka? He said he loved her, that she was good and kind and beautiful and gentle, but he never had the guts to marry her. He was worried about his community and what the people would say, the Greeks and the Cretans. He opted. He married a Greek woman with a big fat dowry. He was weak, my father. Yes, he may have been a hero or a radical, anti-fascist, anti-royalist, anti-racist, anti-colonialist, but when it came down to it, he behaved in a cowardly manner. He said that he loved her. He said to her, I will raise the boy. But my mother Amelia, she cried. She refused. She said no. But then he persuaded her. It is better for the boy to grow up Greek, they said. And then he just pushed out. What does it take to be a hero, Papa? Brave enough to kill? Or strong enough to love? So I learned Shangaan. And I went to the villages to find my people. And when I got to the rural areas, I saw how the people were living. I was so sad and so shocked. I was embarrassed about my clothing, my clean clothing, my haircut. So I poured a bucket of mud over my head. Mamaka, o Theos anapari psichulas. Ela frona e metohoma kus esquepas mutere. Eonia sui mimi, mamaka. Oh, mamaka. He fired her as if it was her fault. Now she doesn't have a place to rest. Nobody knows where she lies. Nobody. I never found her grave. I met these Soviet sailors on the ship, and they taught me all about communism. And I told them, take me away. Take me with you. Take me away from this wretched continent. Please, take... Then I got a job at Peter Sedaris's coffee shop. Chai et kiosk. So I handed out communist pamphlets to all the customers. And I had discussions and debates and arguments with them. One day I told this Portuguese businessman, a wealthy councillor, I said to him, sir, you Portuguese have exploited the Mozambicans, but one day the Mozambicans are going to rise up and they're going to take back everything you Portuguese stole from them. And he told Mr. Sedaris, he said, that I was dangerous fired me.
Lichter, up!
No, please don't hurt me.
Tsafendas, kom hier zo,
No,
jonge
please.
broerzoon.
What are you going to do to me, please? Alsjeblieft, meneer, please don't
Jy
hurt me,
dink
please.
seker dit is mos lekker in die chokkie, né?
No, please. Ah! No, please.
Daai
Alsjeblieft,
miskat
meneer.
van die
What are
bos dit.
what are you
Kyk
doing
die
to me?
pijn, kom er eens, piet!
No.
Dat is op een boer. Kry jy nie skaam nie?
Please, meneer.
Kry jy nie
Alsjeblieft,
skaam nie?
meneer.
Ha?
I didn't want to sing anymore. I wanted to fight. I was going to be a boxer once. Yes. Every afternoon after school, I'd come home, I'd train hard because I wanted to be fit, I wanted to be strong, I wanted to fight back. And one day my teacher said to me, Minis, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I told her, I want to be a rebel. I want to liberate the Mozambicans from the Portuguese. I want to be a revolutionary like Simon Bolivar! And she called my parents. And my father laughed because he wanted me to be a revolutionary. He wanted me to be a rebel. I started a scrapbook on Lenin and the revolutions. I love the revolutions. Greek Revolution, French Revolution, Russian Revolution. The people rising up. The people rising up! And then when we went to buy sweets, I stopped people in the streets and I told them all about colonialists and how the rich were exploiting the poor. Then they complained and that shop wouldn't allow me to go there and buy sweets anymore. Then my step-sister Katerina, she said, we can't take you anywhere. You can't keep your bloody mouth shut. Always talking, arguing. But I didn't care. If I heard anybody saying anything that I did not agree with, I told them, I gave them my opinion. I told them that I was anti-fascist, anti-royalist, anti-colonialist, and anti-Nazi. I even learned how to make bombs. Yes. And my stepmother, she went to my father and she said, if you don't stop giving him communist literature, I'm going to leave you. Yes, Dr. Zava. Well, I was sick, you see. I had this dragon tapeworm growing inside of me, and it was eating everything I was eating. I would eat and eat and eat, but I'd stay just as thin. And then this Portuguese doctor came, and he gave me some medicine. And when I squatted down, out it came this long, thin worm about 2 feet. And the doctor told my stepmother that we must keep it so that we can see if the head is out or not. But my stepmother, she wouldn't listen. She took it to flush it down the toilet. And I said, no, the doctor said we must keep it so that we can see if the head is out or not. No. Now we won't know if the Dr. Zava, I knew that the head was still inside. You see, because when I got hungry, it got hungry too. And then it started eating me. Dr. Zava, I want to be free of this worm. I want my freedom. I'm helpless against it. It sits under the ground. It waits for the rain to come. It waits for the weather to change. I want to be free. No, Dr. Sartre. No, the worm did not tell me to kill the Prime Minister. No. But even if it did, Dr. Sartre, what's to say that there wasn't a worm inside the worm telling it what to do, Dr. Sartre? I mean, where do messages begin? Where do ideas start, Dr. Zabo? It's not so easy to kill an idea. It's easier to kill a person than to change a person's heart. You can't do that with a dagger. Yeah, Dr. Zabo, he's always seated on the edge of his seat, looking at me intently with these big glasses, thick glasses, big eyes, waiting for what I'm going to say next. He's definitely a person of quality. No, like you and me, person of quality. I have to put on my best when I talk to Dr. Zabo. I don't want to appear sane enough to swing. Looney escapes the noose. And you know, Dr. Zabo's not the only person who's asking me question after question. No. There's Major Rousseau. He's also asking me question after question, but he's not at all interested in Mrs. Sedaris or the tagworm or my stepmother. No, all he wants to know is what groups I belong to, what associations I'm affiliated with, and really I would like to tell him. I would like to help him, but only Major Rousseau, I don't belong to any groups. Yes, I joined the Communist Party and I'm a member of the Church of Christ, yes. But I don't belong to any groups. I never stayed in one place long enough to find my group, form my community. I'm alone. I don't belong to any groups. I'm nothing. I know this world. I know this place. I've traveled all over the world. My many travels across the seas to different countries. It began when I joined the US Navy during the Second World War, and I found myself on a ship adrift across the Atlantic, going to fight Hitler in Europe. But I didn't realize how dangerous the waters were. There were U-boats in the water, and I called them and I said, excuse me, I've changed my mind. I'd like to get off the ship. Can you take me back? Are you mad? Do you want to die? There are people out there, U-boats. They're going to kill us. You have to be crazy. You have to be mad to go out there. Do you want to die? And then the unthinkable happened. A U-boat saw us and torpedoed. There was smoke and water everywhere. Fire. We paddled up our way back to the shore. I've never been so scared in all my life. And then I said to them, I can't do this, please. Please don't make me do this. The sea is angry. I can't do this. Are you mad? You have to be crazy. Do you want to die? And then I escaped. And then I was arrested. And they put me into the cell. It was small. So small and concrete and cold. They put me there like an animal. I didn't deserve that. I called there at the Boston Psychopathic Hospital. I called the doctors and I said, excuse me, can I talk to you, please? I hear voices coming out of the radiators. You see, you have to get the balance right. You can't be too crazy. You just have to be crazy enough. I wanted to be looked after, but I also wanted to be free. At that hospital, I met a fellow patient, Tom Tough, a skinny Irishman, and he had a relationship with, you won't believe what, a tapeworm, a peculiar relationship with a tapeworm. And because of this special relationship, the doctors were interested in him. They were talking to him. He told me that he even got extra food because he told the doctors that the worm was hungry. Many people had heard voices through radiators in all sorts of places, but nobody had a talking tapeworm like Tom Tough. I didn't realize it then, but I realize it now. Tom Tough saved my life. I've never told this to anybody before. I only told my best friend, a teacher in Cape Town, Patrick O'Ryan, teacher of English and art. He's the only person who knew about Tom Tough. I grimaced, I shouted, I swore, I spat, I even took my own feces. That takes some doing, let me tell you. I took my own feces and I rubbed it on the walls, on the floors of my body. It was only when I introduced them to my very own tapeworm that the doctors were interested. Then they wanted to listen. Then they wanted to talk to me. I even got extra food. But when you start to lie to protect yourself, you have to keep on lying, keep on lying, keep on lying, keep on moving, keep on lying, and then you start to forget what is true. I had to dive into the deep, dark blue. Some people said that I was looking for charity. They called me lazy and malingering, but I saw opportunities. I was a survivor. Besides, I answered all their questions. I played the roles they wanted me to play. You might call me a coward, but I was also a survivor, and I quite enjoyed traveling from place to place. And then they classified me insane. They had to deport me. They couldn't send me back to South Africa because I was a communist. They couldn't send me to Mozambique because the Portuguese secret police had a thick file on me. So they sent me to Greece, a country I'd never been to before, and I became a stranger in a strange land. But we're a better quality of person. I can't be on the streets of Athens selling trinkets. Better quality of person. So I wrote to Harold Macmillan, the British Prime Minister, and to Roosevelt, the American president, and the Portuguese president. I wrote them clear letters stating my case. I thought that maybe they would hear me. They would help me.
Lichter up!
Oh, gentleman, you brought me a grafanola with the 2 wires. I've been in solitary singing the songs in my head, and now you brought the grafanola. Thank you so much. The song Bella Ciao.
Who made you do it?
No, please.
This is for Verwoerd. Who sent you?
Nobody.
This
the
is for
people.
Verwoerd.
The people.
Who is your commanding officer?
Nobody. I did it myself.
This is for Verwoerd.
20 days. They tortured me with shocks. They put my head into buckets of water and they attached these wires to my testicles. And they kept saying to me, "Why did you kill Verwoerd?" And I told them, "I did it for the people. He was a tyrant. He was an oppressor." And they kept saying, "This is for Verwoerd. This is for Verwoerd." And I kept trying to remember the words of the song, the Robinson song, and Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, oh Bella Ciao. And they kept saying, "This is for Verwoerd. This is for Verwoerd." I kept repeating the same thing again and again and again. They didn't want to kill me. They wanted to punish me. For weeks they interrogated me. And then they found it. The worm. The fantasy tapeworm. Aha! It was the worm that made you do it. And I said, no, no, it was not the worm that made me do it. Verwoerd was a tyrant, an oppressor. He was Hitler's best student. I did it for the people, the oppressed, the rejected, the dejected. I have no ties. I'm a lone soldier. All those countries I went to, including Greece, I love people. I get on with people. We mirror each other. If somebody is good and kind and generous, I'm good and kind and generous too. All those travels, all those countries I went to, I gave away so much. I gave away my clothing, my books, my favorite records, money. I even gave my car away once, yes, to people who were good. But when they had those interviews and all those witnesses, people called me all sorts of names. Somebody said that I was an untidy fellow. Someone called me a fun fellow. Someone said I'm always talking and arguing. Somebody called me an aristocratic beggar. And a Texas millionaire. Somebody called me a pig. Those months, years traveling, looking for work, looking for food, looking for a country, very difficult for me in the wilderness. And all I really wanted was to find a nice place to live. You know, buy a house with a garden, open up a shop, get married, have children, watch the children go through school, watch Helen growing old next to me. But it wasn't long after I left that view of Table Mountain behind that I started getting weary and tired of this adventurous journey, looking for work, looking for it. And really all I wanted to do was to come back home to South Africa. I longed to return to the country in which I grew up, or to the country of my mother, Amelia. I did war work in Johannesburg between 1940 and 1942. And I voluntarily joined the Merchant Navy, and I served in submarine-infested waters. I'm now living in Athens, in Greece, a strange land with people of different cultures, norms and practices. Please, let me come home. Please. But the South African government wouldn't let me. 9 times they rejected me. 9! Every country I went to, all those countries, I went straight to the embassy to apply to come back home. 9 times they said no. They had my name on a list. Had my name on a blacklist. Maybe I should say a half-colored list. I was in exile. 46, 47, 48, 50, 59, 62. No, 9 times. I got quite desperate, really. But isn't it funny that the more desperate you get in life, the less people are there for you, to help you, to be there for you. It's crazy, it should be the other way around. That the more desperate you get, the more people will be there for you, to help you, to see you, to help you. I think they see the fear in your eyes and they just, you would imagine people would help you. Not people. Not the South African government. And you know, it's one thing being rejected by one person, but by a whole country, a whole nation. That's not very nice. Then you know that you are totally and utterly alone. In 1963, I changed tactic. I didn't apply to come back home. I applied for amnesty. I wrote and I said, I'm a changed man. I'm no longer a communist. I don't believe in communism. I'm no longer a threat to your country. Please let me come home. And my family had a connection in Lorenzo Marques, general, and they bribed him, so I was allowed back into Lorenzo Marques in 1963. But when I got there, my father, they told me he had died. I didn't know. Babaka, you would have been proud of me. I was a rebel, I was a revolutionary. Look at this poster, this anti-Verwoerd poster. I was alone, but I was there. You would have been so proud of me, Papa. I wrote to you, I sent you photographs, letters. I even sent you your own personal red beret, Papa. I didn't know that you died. You and me as Why do they do this to me? Huh? Why do they hurt me like this? Did you see me hurting them? Did you see me doing anything to them? You know, my whole life, I've only ever wanted to help people, to be there for people, not to hurt people. Why do they hurt me like this? I thought, how can I help people? How can I not hurt people? I thought I'd become a teacher. Actually, I did teach once. I taught at the Turkish language school, and I learned Shangaan, and I taught English in Shangaan. Actually, do you know how many languages I speak? All those countries that I went to, let me count them. I'm going to count them right now. I'll tell you exactly how many languages. I speak all those languages. Every country I went to, I learned the language. 12. I speak 12 languages. I could have taught languages. I could have taught from the Bible. Actually, I did try. I did try and teach from the Bible once. The word has had a very profound meaning in my life, and I would go up to people to share with them the word, to tell them about the word, and they would just turn their backs, turn around and walk away. I couldn't understand. It was strange. I would have been dead a long time ago if it wasn't for religion. You know, because I thought that maybe if I was a hero or a somebody, a rebel or a teacher, then maybe, just maybe, people would look beyond the other things. I mean, let's take Jesus, for example. Jesus wasn't white. He was more Semitic colored skin, Mediterranean colored skin like me, right? You don't hear people talking about the color of Jesus' skin. No. Why? Because he's a hero. He was a somebody, a teacher, a rebel. But when you're a nothing, when you're a nobody, then people make a very big issue of the color of your skin and what group you belong to. And the problem with me is I've got a little bit of everything and not a lot of anything. I've got a little bit of Portuguese, a little bit of Sangan, a little bit of Greek, a little bit of German, and who knows what else. Maybe it would have been better if I was pure black or pure white. But I'm not. Now neither the blacks nor the whites want to have anything to do with me, you see, because I don't belong to them. I'm not one of them. I don't belong to their group. You see, it's this group nonsense again. What group you belong to, this group or that group. What does it matter? This Verwoerd dividing up the people of the world, the countries, the communities, splitting them apart into single entities and all those single entities colliding with other entities. I told General Vandenberg that I disagreed with Verwoerd's policies. I did. So I killed him. And you can do to me what you want. You can kill me too. I don't care. He was a tyrant. It's called tyrannicide. You know what the Greeks call it? Tyrannokthanos. The killing of a tyrant for the greater good of the people. In ancient Greece, General Vandenberg, tyrannicide, tyrannokthanos, was a heroic act. You were a hero if you killed a tyrant. You see a man committing a crime. You see him committing this crime every single day. A crime that causes pain and suffering to hundreds and thousands of people. You see him. What do? You can't go to the police. You can't go to the government. Because he is the law. So what do? You're guilty of a crime. But you're also guilty if you do nothing to stop or prevent that crime.
Luchter up!
No! No, I've told you, it was not the voice of the worm that told me to do it. This was a different voice altogether. This was the voice of reason. This was the voice of logic, of reason. Because you see, Verwoerd believed in 100% purity. He believed that the races should be kept 100% separate and apart, that there should be no mixing. But I ask you, with 100% purity, how can you have growth, development, evolution, with 100% purity? No, purity is like incest. It makes you sick, weak, deformed. And I've known about this for a very, very, very long time. In 1964, I was in the gondola hotel in Mozambique. Yes, in the gondola bar. That night, I was in the bar and I was feeling particularly positive about the future. And I saw all these people in the bar and I thought, I've got to talk to them. I owe it to these people. I have to save them. I have to tell them what I know, what I understand. I have to explain to them my comprehension, my insight. This question of purity. I have to talk to them. And that's exactly what I did. I stood up right there and then on the table. And I said to them, we are Africans!
Hoi, wat gaan er daar binnen? Bly stil, Tsafendas.
We are bastards. And that's good and beautiful. We are like compost. We must disintegrate. And then we must integrate and become new forms. insecure about our identity. We hang on to this notion of purity. Purity is the language of apartheid. Don't be fooled by the color of my skin. My mother was African. I am African. We are Africans. And we'll have a flag with a rainbow on it!
Houd die fok op te praat!
All those many colors of the rainbow, they'll represent the many colors of our nation. Black, white, colored, yellow, brown. We must mix our flesh and blood. We must mix our flesh and blood so that we become one new mixture. And very soon, we will all be the same mixture. We will all be bastards. The answer is not in the staying apart. It's in the coming together. That's evolution!
As jy nie nou ophou nie, dan kom maak ek jou ophou! Wen nou God!
I was feeling free. And I wanted to set those people free. To save them. There were some people there who didn't like what I had to say. They banged their bottles and glasses on those tables. But I didn't care. They even called the police. I didn't care. Because it was the truth. The truth.
Ek het jou gewaarsku.
No, meneer, please.
Maar jy wil mos nie luister nie.
I can say what I want. I'm crazy, Rebecca.
Ja, have a go. Dis goed. Why wouldn't they hate me? I killed their God. Verwoerd. Verwoerd's funeral drew the biggest crowd ever in the history of South Africa. Over 250,000 people in attendance. The chief of the Zulus was there, Kaiser Matanzima. All 11 languages were spoken. And there were representatives from the South African white, black, colored, and Indian communities. He is buried in Heroes Acre in Pretoria. And I lie in an unmarked grave near Sturkfontein in Krugersdorp. At first they hated the Portuguese because they thought I was Portuguese. And then they hated the Greeks because they thought I was Greek. They threw stones and rocks into the shop windows, the Greek shops, the cafes on the corner, the supermarkets, smashing their windows. They spat in the faces of the children, all the Greek children. But they got it wrong, you see. I wasn't for the Greeks, I wasn't with the Greeks, I wasn't with the Portuguese. I was with the oppressed, the downtrodden, the rejected, the dejected, the poor. And the guard said to me, "Stop talking like that, Tsafendas! That's communism!" Mandela, Zuma, Sisulu Sobukwe, Lionel Davis. I was the invisible man. They declared me insane and they put me in isolation. But they never gave me any treatment. No one was allowed to talk to me. I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody. The invisible man. Violence for breakfast. Torture for tea. And then they brought me across the ocean to Pretoria Central, where they put me in my own private cell. I became the state president's personal political prisoner. A small room next door, the hanging room, declared insane but not hospitalized, placed in prison next to the hanging room. The hundreds and hundreds of hangings of apartheid. The condemned lamenting their fate. I heard the creak of the trapdoor, the zing of the rope, and then the banging and hammering of the nails into the coffins, the wood of the coffins. I couldn't stand up straight. I was bent in waves. Before I got that job at the Houses of Parliament, I was working here on a diamond dredging ship here on the coast. And late at night, I'd go up onto the deck because I wanted to hear the howling of the wind, feel the salt sea on my face. Oh. And out there on the deck, I imagined what it must have been like to have been Volrad Voltemade, who went out there to save as many of those souls from the shipwreck before the sea closed in over him. And then I would imagine that I was Volrad Voltemade. And you know, he had a big, strong horse. And I imagined that I too had a big, strong horse. And that I was going out there to save all those souls from the shipwreck before the sea closed in over me. Hold on! Hold on! I'll save you! Here, take my hand! Hold on to my horse! Hold on to my horse! We can live! I'll save you! I'll save you! We can live! Don't die! Here, take my hand! Take my hand! No! I'll save you! I'll save you! I'll save you! One of the other sailors saw me and he reported me to my boss, and then my boss fired me and I was so upset. I was only playing. My whole life I had these stupid menial jobs. I've been a boilermaker, a clerk, a sailor. I never had a proper job, a real job. But I've always told people about that tyrant Verwoerd, the oppressor. You know, my whole life,
This issue of what color I am and what group I belong to, it's caused me a lot of problems. You see, at first, I was classified colored. Colored. Because of my mamaka. Amelia. Colored. But then my father, he reclassified me. He took me from Lorenzo Marques, he took me down to the Transvaal, to Maritzburg, to attend schooling with my step-siblings. So I was classified white. Nobody asked any questions. I was white. But then something happened to change all that. Helen happened. Helen happened. You know, before I met her, I thought, finally my life was starting to change. I got a job as a clerk in Durban, and I joined the Church of Christ. And it was through them that I started writing these long letters to this young woman in Cape Town, whose name was Helen Daniels. Long letters we'd write to one another, and she had the most delicate script, fragrant letters. I asked Helen to marry me in a letter. I proposed to Helen in a letter. For those 2 weeks, waiting for her reply, it was so strange. I felt that I was floating in the air. I was walking, but I couldn't feel the feet. My feet, I couldn't feel the ground under my feet. And then it arrived. 2 weeks later, this long brown envelope with a Cape Town stamp on it. I recognized it immediately from Helen's delicate, fragrant script. I remember my hands were shaking, trembling as I opened the envelope. And inside the envelope there was one page. And on that one page there was written one word. And that one word was... Yes! Oh, I was so excited, I was so happy. I quit my job immediately and I collected everything I ever had in the world. And I headed straight down to Cape Town Station. And I stood there and I waited for Helen and her parents, because I was going to stay with them until the wedding. And I stood and I waited. I had a suitcase with some old clothes, some pots and pans, and 2 books of grammar. And I stood and I waited. Day grew long. At first I thought that maybe they'd forgotten or changed their minds. But then the moon set and it grew cold and I started to get scared because I didn't know anyone else in Cape Town. I was going to stay with Helen and her parents until the wedding. But you know what happened? They hadn't forgotten. No. They hadn't changed their minds. No. They were waiting for me on a different platform. A different platform. Because Helen Daniels was coloured. Coloured just like my mother. And I could see how surprised Helen was and her father to find me on the whites-only platform. And then I explained to Mr. Daniels, I used to be coloured, I was changed to white. I changed before, I could change again. And that's exactly what I was going to do at the Department of Home Affairs, the Population Registry Office. And I remember in the waiting room, they had this big plant with these big leaves, and the leaves were thick with dust. And I dusted the leaves. Because dust must not be on leaves. Leaves must not have dust. In the light, I saw all these millions and millions of dust particles floating like all the worlds of the universe. And then I came up with this perfectly logical, reasonable solution. When it was my turn to go into the Department of Home Affairs to talk to the man at the Population Registry's desk, I would tell him that I did not want this ID book
that said I belonged to this group or that group, black, white, coloured, Indian, this invisible crowd, and that I had a perfectly logical, reasonable solution. I would ask for an open identity, no race. And that's exactly what I did. He was sitting behind his desk. Big eyes, thick glasses. He reminds me of Dr. Zalmo. So I told him, I explained to him the solution, this perfectly logical, reasonable solution of an open identity, no race. He put down the pencil he was using, whatever he was writing. Then he took off his glasses and put them on the desk, put his hands on either side of the desk, and then he lifted himself up. And he looked at me. And then he looked at his shoes. And then he looked at me. And then he leaned forward and he really looked at me. And then he started tapping his forehead like this. And then he said, "You want to cause problems, huh? And I said, No, I don't want to cause problems. No. You see, I need to be white so that I can get a good job. But I want to be colored so that I can marry the woman I love." But he said nothing. He sat down and put on his glasses, picked up his pencil, and carried on writing or doing whatever he was doing before. And I just stood there. I didn't know what to do. It felt very strange. So I decided to leave. But as I got to the door, I heard him say under his breath, "No hukumbulye amei nai." I couldn't breathe, I couldn't turn around, I couldn't do anything. I ran down the stairs into the streets of Cape Town, and then running on the streets of Cape Town, I had all these images, these visions of my mother in my father's house, washing his house, cleaning his furniture, washing his clothes, washing his socks, and how she loved him, and probably thought that he loved her, but when she fell pregnant with me, he kicked her out as if it was her fault. And now, Mama, she doesn't have a place to rest. Nobody knows where she lies. Nobody knows where her brain is, Mama. And I ran on the street and then I thought of Helen Daniels. The wind dried the tears on my face, and when I got back to the house, I told Mr. Daniels what had happened, and he breathed this deep sigh, and he said that maybe I mustn't stay in the house any longer. Well, it was against the law, right? I couldn't argue, I couldn't complain, I couldn't do anything. There was only one thing that I could do. So I left. On a cold Thursday morning. My one love. My one true hope. And I never saw her again. And then and now I really started getting angry. How can it be right? How can it be right, this Heidi book nonsense? That you belong to this group or that group? White, black, coloured, Indian, this invisible crowd. How can it be right that you can't kiss? Huh? You know, things would have been better with a different government. Things would have been different with a better government. God! Please, can I have one cup of proper tea, real tea, please?
What? dink jy dit is 'n fucking hotel hierdie?
Dit is nie 'n fucking hotel nie.
Otherwise I've had sheets on my bed.
Wat sê jy daar?
Niks.
Niks meneer, niks, nothing.
They're also in here 24/7, staring at four walls. It's enough to make anybody crazy.
Room service.
I'm hungry. And the worm is hungry too. This didn't happen overnight. This is an accumulation of every single day in my life, of where I've been and what I've been doing, right up to this point. This very point right here now. Whenever I've been hungry, and I've been hungry all over the world at different times of my life in different countries, and whenever I've been hungry, the worm has got angry because it's hungry too, and then it starts to writhe and slide here in my stomach here, causing me great spasms so bad I've had to be hospitalized many times all over the world. That's what I told them. When the world is ugly, it makes me angry, and then I can't think sensibly. When everything you believe in to be real and true and just, it changes. And then once again, you pack your bags and you're looking for work, looking for a country, looking for, I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe this cell. Maybe this cell is what I was looking for. And even though this worm has caused me great pain, I sometimes think it led me to do something worthwhile. Though sometimes I think I regret it. I'm sorry. I've been a different race at different times of my life, in different parts of the world. And that has been very strange. Even here in South Africa, a strange land, even here, I have felt like a foreigner! Darkness. It surrounds me. It surrounds me. It creeps in on me. The darkness, the silence, the loneliness, it creeps in on me. It surrounds me. Creeps in on me. It seeps into my pores. It pours into my mouth. And then it comes here to my stomach. And then I want to shit it out. Shit it out. Push it out. Push it out. Take it. Smear it on the walls. On the floors. And everything smells. It smells so bad. And then it comes back, it creeps in on me, it seeps in on me, the loneliness, the darkness, it seeps into my pores, my mouth is open to it, and then it comes into my stomach, and it hardens like a shell. saying, you've got to keep on moving. You've got to keep on talking. Keep on moving. Keep on moving. Keep on talking. There was no other way. This man had to be stopped. This called for sacrifice. I knew what it was that I had to do. This called for sacrifice, like Volrad Bortomada, who went out into the sea to save as many of those souls from the shipwreck before the sea closed in over him, like Jesus. This called for sacrifice. Splitting up the people of the world, communities, groups, countries. There must be a coming together, not a splitting apart, splitting up the people of the world into single entities, and all those entities colliding with other entities, splitting them apart. Very soon, there'd be a chain reaction, a volcanic eruption, and there'd be nothing left, nothing left, with millions and millions of dust particles. Specks floating. This man had to be stopped. It was now. So very, very early the next morning, I collected all the money I had in the world. And I headed downtown city centre, Cape Town. I remember I was wearing my grey suit when I left the Houses of Parliament. I headed downtown city centre, Cape Town. And I waited for the shops to open because I had to buy a dagger. And when the shops did open, I bought 2 daggers, just to be sure. One from Raw Bones and one from City Guns. And I headed back to the Houses of Parliament, where I was working as a messenger. And today, I have a very important message to deliver to Dr. Hendrik Verwoerd from me, Dimitri Tsafendas. Now, I'm not a violent person by nature. Even though in London one day, I smashed the faces of some fascists. And during the Greek Civil War, I fought alongside Greek partisan soldiers, the communists. They taught me how to use a dagger. I remember when I got back to the Houses of Parliament, the bells were ringing. The bells were ringing to call the people in for the afternoon session. I remember the bells were ringing when I walked into chambers. Now, messengers are not allowed to walk into chambers, but I walked right in. It was time to deliver. It was now. I was determined. It was time now. And I started walking, and I'm following him because he's walking. And still, I'm following him, and I'm reaching for the dagger, and there's a lock or a click, and I'm starting to struggle with the dagger. And still he's walking. People are staring. Bells. Bells are ringing. And the seconds are passing like the slow turn of the ox wagon wheel. Still I'm struggling for what he's walking, and now he's behind his desk. People are staring, bells are ringing. Then at last, I get the blade loose, and then behind the dagger, I go down, down, down! In his neck, his shoulders, lungs, heart. Die, you bastard! Who's your bastard? This is for Verwoerd! This is for Verwoerd! This is for Verwoerd!
Look now.
That last morning, I caught a taxi to the waterfront. I wanted to see the sea one more time.
If I wasn't alone, I would never have got that job in the Houses of Parliament. If I wasn't alone, I would never have got so close to him. If I wasn't alone, I would have to worry about my family, my people. But I was alone. Like a ship cut loose from its anchor, drifting. This was the reason. This was the reason why. You do something good, and you throw it into the sea. The hero sacrifices himself, but who justifies the taking of another human being's life? They tortured me for weeks. They interviewed and interrogated hundreds and hundreds of witnesses. But my trial lasted 4 days. Deranged was the word they used. Maladjusted. A feckless rolling stone. Unscrupulous. Crafty. Selfish. The judge called me a furiosus. Mad as a dog, Dimitri. But they didn't tell the newspapers that all I wanted was an open identity. No country acknowledges me as a communist who sought to end the discrimination of people, the division of people on the basis of race. But I didn't put out the fire. The flames, they grew stronger, more ferocious. You can't fight hatred with hatred. You can't fight anger with anger. I poured hatred onto those who hated me most, and they just hated me more. It was only when the man of peace came to power that Verwoerd's face disappeared and his shadow began to lift. But you've known me for 30 years. Did I ever strike you as being insane? But if I had a tapeworm, I would have gone to a gastroenterologist, not a psychologist. But the pain, it was too much more. I couldn't bear it any longer. Besides, I wanted to live, and they all wanted me mad. I wanted to save my life. And my friend Patrick O'Ryan, the English teacher, the art teacher from Cape Town, he didn't tell them about Tom Tuff. He didn't tell them about the tapeworm. Please, Patrick, when I die, will you find Patrick and tell him how grateful I am and that I'm sorry that I put him in such a situation, Patrick, please. He's a good man. Patrick O'Ryan. In 1994, Judge Jody Collipin wrote to the government, and he suggested that perhaps they consider allowing me to go and spend my last years with people that I know or trust, not kept in isolation, a mental patient, but in prison, effectively on death row. So the government agreed to release me to some people. When they spoke to my family said that they felt they were too old now to look after me. And when they spoke to the Greek community who for 30 years distanced themselves from me, they said they were too scared. They feared the repercussions of putting me in one of their old age homes, the Yerokomia. So they brought me here to Sturfington, where I spent the last years of my life in the rotten sweetness of unwashed armpits, uncared for teeth, mixed in with the odors of half-digested food. Nobody cleans me, nobody washes me, nobody cares for me. So please, I'm asking you, do not come too close to me because I smell, I stink. Those years in Pretoria were hard and difficult. They put me in a straitjacket and they kicked me with those boots shuddering, cutting into me. And they didn't want to kill me, they wanted to punish me, and punish me repeatedly. But the worst has got to be when they urinated in my tea. Can you believe it? They urinated in my tea. I really would like one cup of real tea, proper tea. That would be nice. Maybe I did get the head of the worm after all. Maybe I did do something worthwhile. Maybe I got the head of a government of snakes. Maybe I did something that helped Helen. Maybe it helped other people. Maybe I did something my father would be proud of. There are 3 million shipwrecks at the bottom of the sea. The sea is in all of us. We all have the same blood. The deep, dark blue glistens with gold. But to find the gold, you have to dive in and swim down, down, down where it's so dark you cannot see your limbs in front of you any longer. Swim deeper, down, 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 where it's so dark nobody can see what you look like. No face, no race. There at the bottom of the ocean, there lies the gold, amidst the bones of history. But please, I want to see the sea one more time before I die. I want my freedom.